Hey everyone, welcome back to Kickin' and Screamin' episode number 6.
Today we're going to pull back the curtain on the realities and the behind the scenes that the spectators don't see off the field.
If you're an athlete and you often feel unseen or unheard, just know that you're not the only one that's going through this, and we're here for you, and this episode is for you guys. Okay, so first we're going to be diving into the pressures to perform.
So starting off, this is something that every athlete deals with. The mental game, if you mess up in practice, am I going to play the next day? Like really trying to get yourself in the right mental space to cope with that pressure.
I think there's a lot of pressures that athletes put on themselves, and that's all your internal pressures. Like if you mess up, you think it's a way bigger deal than maybe your teammates or your coaches do. But sometimes when you mess up, you think about, how are those people seeing me? Like, how does my coach see me? Is my coach going to play me? Or is my teammate mad at me for making that mistake? And sometimes you just have to take a step back and realize, like, your teammate makes the same mistake and you don't think about it, you let it go. Or your coach maybe is super proud of you for at least trying something new. And while you made a mistake, at least you were trying something.
Yeah, and we talk about this a lot. Like, we have had special life coaches come in and work with us on the mental side of the game and coping with this pressure. And you realize that it's more of a big deal your freshman year when you first come in and feeling the pressure of really living up to perform, that you're good enough to be on this team. And as the years progress, it gets better, but there are definitely still struggles that pull you back down and make you really have to work to get through that mental low again throughout the season, throughout the year.
Yeah, I think there's also tests throughout the year, such as we do the beep test, which I think is such a mental struggle and such a mental test. As much as it's a fitness test, I do think it's almost more mentally hard than it is physically hard sometimes. Pushing yourself past that barrier of I'm tired, I want to be done, and just continuing to push yourself. And I also think there's a lot of pressure from yourself, your coaches, to get a certain score. Let's say you have like a minimum. For our team, we have minimum 30 to play, and so there's that pressure to get 30, and I think that sometimes that can be so much pressure that you almost underperform and maybe you stop early because you're so like stressed about it or something.
Through all the struggles of pressure, you at least get to fall back on your team. Everyone wants you to succeed, and everyone has their own coping mechanisms to deal with that. For me, sometimes I do meditation before games, and just finding what works for you to get into your athlete flow is what's gonna work best. Okay, so now we're gonna go a bit more into the highlight reel, such as what you see on social media versus the truths of what happens behind closed doors after practice, after games.
I think that one of the biggest things is that social media, while it shows the truth, like the actual things that we go through, such as the wins that we have, the new gear that we're getting, and these crazy travel trips that we're going on, it also doesn't show the full reality of what we're going through. It's not showing the 5 a.m. practice or the conditioning that we're doing or the losses. It's just showing parts that they want spectators to see. And while it is the truth, it's not the full truth.
Yeah, I think like going along with that, like on travel trips, you don't see the layover homework grinds that we have to do. And with 5 a.m. wake-ups, like the conditioning that we had this spring was like, maybe they'll be posting the like our beep test scores and how well we did on that, and while that was great, you didn't get to see the hustle and the grind that, and really the anxiety that came with the conditioning every Tuesday, Thursday. Like that was probably the hardest mentally I've had to push myself in conditioning, was this last spring, and it was a grind. And I'm like, everyone's like proud of how we did in the end. Through that process, it was some, like, you know, whether you're not making the times, there was some times that I didn't make like the exact time that was needed, and it was like pushing through that mental aspect of conditioning. Like that was hard, that was difficult, you know, and it's like you don't see that part.
I think another thing is, while social media, like Instagram, may be posting these are your team's wins, this is how much they won by, 2-0, or like we won the Big Sky Championship, like it's not showing that our very last game was one of the most emotionally like wrecking games for a lot of people. it was so hard to walk off that field because for some people it's your last time ever playing with them or their last time ever playing soccer at all. And so while social media sees those great wins and those fun celebrations and all that, it's not seeing the emotional toll that it takes when the season does officially end for a lot of people.
Yeah, and as a team that performs very highly and that cares so deeply about this sport, we take losses heavier than we take the highs of winning. And so that part is really, it's hard to like deal with when a season ends and like your seniors are leaving and how upsetting that really was that the season was ending or we lost a game that we should have won. Like those things can impact you and impact you, like a team's confidence and shake you, and that's something that we always continue to work through and work on.
Okay, now we're going to talk a little bit about if an athlete's having an identity crisis, also like the sacrifices that come with soccer and maybe the burnout that comes with being a collegiate athlete.
Yeah, so obviously there are weeks where you're going to feel like you're just going through the motions. I feel like personally I mostly felt that like in spring because everything's very like the same over the weeks. And through that, I would say like our coaches really encourage us to have an open communication. Like if we're struggling in an aspect outside of soccer, like let's say school, then they really encourage us to have that open communication with them so that they know that we're kind of going through this lull in our playing that shows on the field, and just like getting through that and having that open communication with your coaches and turning to your teammates for support who are also kind of like at this point going through the motions and like showing up for practice, getting to lift, like just having that open communication and that support system, leaning on each other, we have found has been really beneficial through that kind of identity crisis.
Yeah, I also think there's sometimes when soccer can feel like a job and not as much as like a passion or a hobby. And that can be really scary sometimes of wondering like who you are without soccer. And I think that really came for me when a few years ago I got injured and I was out for the entire season. And I really had to think about like how do I define myself without soccer? And that was really hard for me. There was times when I just didn't know what I was doing. I was so stressed about what comes next, like if I don't have soccer, who am I? And again, like it can be super scary, but I think relying on your teammates, any support systems, maybe your trainers, if you have counselors, also like letting your coaches know. I think that was one of the hardest things for me was telling my coaches like I'm struggling, I don't know what I'm doing, I don't know where I belong on this team right now because I'm not actually playing, I'm not on the field with anyone. And they gave me roles and they gave me things to do, and it really helped me just have a better outlook on soccer and trying to become part of the team again. I think the worst thing that you can do for yourself is isolate yourself from the team. Like try to get as involved as you can, even if it's really hard for you to be involved while not actually being involved in the physical sport itself.
Mm-hmm. And another aspect that honestly every athlete goes through is the sacrifices that you have to be aware that you're going to make. We like to look at every sacrifice we make as a blessing. Like we get to be here, we get to play for this team, we chose this. But it's really important to like manage those sacrifices and cope with them. Like sometimes you're not going to make that football game that everyone's going to. You're not going to like be able to really get out there and hang out with a ton of other college students. And that's just something that you kind of have to make your own experience. Like we have found all this love and fun within each other and creating our own kind of experience when we can't do the typical college experience. And the sacrifices you make just like make you who you are at this point, like a college soccer player, and there may be that sacrifice in one point that seems like a negative, but it's just adding to who you are as a player and as a person and what kind of fight you have in you to succeed.
Yeah, I think another thing is just remembering that there's a lot of other people that would love to be in the place that you are, and you're so lucky to be able to have the opportunity to play for a college or to play for something that's bigger than just yourself. And I think that's something that I always remember of even when it gets hard and sometimes you feel like the sacrifices are taking over, that it's the sacrifices that you're willing to make because you're so grateful to be in the place that you are.
And like, we're not saying that there's going to be that moment where you're like, dang it, I really want to be there right now. I wish I wasn't at practice. There 100% going to be those moments. Like, one time we were leaving for going to the airport. We had our travel bags on, ready to go, and our neighbors are all dressed up, ready to go to the football game, walk into the football game, and they're listening to music, and it's just like, that's okay, I'm doing something I love, we're gonna manage it, we're gonna make it fun. Like, it's just finding the positive parts and the parts that may feel sore at the time, but then realizing that this is what we get to do, what we love.
I think that sports are such an interesting thing to think about. I think that while sometimes you're surrounded by teammates, you can also feel so alone and so isolated. And I think while everyone is practicing, trying to do their best, you're not always alone. And a lot of people think that saying I'm struggling is seen as weak, but honestly, I think that shows a lot more about your mental toughness to be able to say it out loud and admit it and still show up every day and work as hard as you can.
Some takeaways that we hope you take away from this episode, with learning more about the behind the scenes, what athletes go through mentally. We hope that from the spectator side, just being really mindful about your opponent, whether it's your opponent or your team that you're cheering for, being cautious with how you are interacting with the game, and remembering that athletes are real people, and that the words that you say, whether on social media or in person, can really impact them. Mental health is, like, in athletes as well, has become so much more relevant. Like, we talk about it all the time, how much the mental game is sometimes even more important than the physical game. So just being mindful of that on the spectator side. And as an athlete, I would say the biggest tip I can give you is, if you're struggling mentally, is just to lean on your support system. That whether that's your team of the people who really just understand it the best, like what you're going through, your coaches. Our coaches really encourage us to reach out to them. Like, they also have a past in your sport and want you to succeed as well. Or whether that's a sports therapist, like, not being afraid to go and reach out for help, and what you're struggling with is the best thing that we can give to you. And if that's us, you can reach out to us. We will be a non-biased opinion and support. So thank you guys for letting us get honest today. This stuff really matters, and it's great for us to be open with you guys about it.
Thank you guys so much for watching. Stay tuned for episode number 7, hopefully coming out next week. It'll hopefully be about a lighter topic than this week's topic, but feel free to like and subscribe, and also DM us if you want.
See you next time!